Hello and welcome to the CBN News App and our special coverage of looking ahead to 2024 now that the control of the House and the Senate are pretty much set and we kind of know the landscape going forward. We want to take a deep dive here into some of the things we can expect to see over the second half of Joe Biden's first term. And joining me is CBN's Jenna Browder and CBN's David Brody. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Good, Dan. Great to have you. Great to have you with me.
It's great to all be here, and I'm glad all of you are watching. And this is obviously, people are just very curious as to what's going to happen. There's a lot. The dust got kicked up. It's kind of settled, but there's still a lot that's going to go on here in the next 2 years. So we're going to preview some of that. But let's start, guys, with Nancy Pelosi making a big announcement today, basically saying her time as Democrat leader in the House is going to be over. She's not going to seek to get that position this time around, and it's been 20 years. So if we can take a look here at what she had to say earlier today.
There is no greater official honor for me than to stand on this floor and to speak for the people of San Francisco. This I will continue to do as a member of the House, speaking for the people of San Francisco, serving the great state of California, and defending our Constitution. And with great confidence in our caucus, I will not seek re-election to Democratic leadership in the next Congress. For me, the hour's come for a new generation to lead the Democratic caucus that I so deeply respect. And I'm grateful that so many are ready and willing to shoulder this awesome responsibility.
All right. So what's your reaction to that, David? The news there, was it a surprise? Was it not? What can we expect going forward?
Yeah, I don't think it was a surprise at all. We got an inkling of that a little bit in her interview with Anderson Cooper, where she, in essence, talked about how the attack on her husband had made a difference for her. But no, I don't think this is any shock at all here. And look, I mean, it's definitely a passing of the torch. And the question is, who's she passing the torch to? At this point, it's going to be kind of a mad scramble among the progressives to take this party in an even more progressive direction. And I think that would be the concern. If you're a conservative in America, you got to be wondering, well, wait a minute, how much more progressive can they get? Well, I think they're about to.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk. Hakeem Jeffries will seek that position. But you're right. It's a new day in Washington with the GOP now in control of the House, and looks like Speaker Kevin McCarthy. I was surprised today. We learned the House came out and they said that they're going to start these investigations into Hunter Biden, and I think this is kind of the route that they're taking. I guess I was surprised with how quickly they came out. The dust is still settling. We still don't know some of the races in the House. They're still to be determined. But yeah, I was surprised by that.
What's your reaction to that, David? I mean, the GOP, I mean, you look at this now, and as Jenna said, they jumped right on that. Is this something we can expect to see going forward, more just them focusing on these investigations? Because there's been a lot of talk on, well, what went wrong here for Republicans on the midterms? They expected a lot more than this. I mean, you have all these headwinds going on that really indicated that, okay, it falls on the people that are currently in power, right? If the economy's bad, all these things are happening that are troubling: inflation, high gas prices, high grocery bills, just a lot of pain to the pocketbook. That usually just falls on the people in power, and it didn't this time. So, and they blamed it for talking about, making it about abortion, et cetera, et cetera. What are the Republicans going to do here going forward?
Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I think there's going to be gridlock for the next couple of years. And I know Washington and gridlock, whenever we ever said that in the same sentence, but it's true, And Jenna, I thought, had a really astute observation that they were like, okay, we have the majority. Was it called 3 seconds ago? Great, let's schedule the press conference. It's like they were chomping at the bit for this, and but the reason, there's a lot of reasons for it, but there's sadly, from an unbiblical perspective, there's some retribution that they want payback, and they're upset at what happened to Trump during the whole impeachment situation, what the Democrats did, and now they're going to go after Biden. As a matter of fact, as Jenna was alluding to, they said that today. I mean, James Comer. Yeah, go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask you. They in the news conference today, Republicans were accusing Joe Biden of being in on some of Hunter Biden's business dealings. What do you think this portends for Joe Biden?
Well, I think it depends on the evidence that they bring forward. And, the Republicans were getting ripped today by some liberal commentators saying, because one of the lines in there was their evidence is all over the internet. And people are like, really? You're going with evidence on the internet? So in other words, what are the documents? What exactly do you have? Because, I mean, is there a smoking gun? Are there 4 or 5 smoking guns? I mean, you bet if you're going to do this, you better have the goods to deliver. So we're going to see. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of egg on the face of Republicans. It'll be interesting to see how the media covers this too, because these are Jim Jordan is going to run the House Judiciary Committee, and James Comer is going to run the House Oversight Committee. But are Republicans going to, or excuse me, the media really going to take an interest in all of these investigations, or are they going to just say it's it's kind of in the retribution, kind of like, oh, nanny boo boo category. Yeah. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, the media will typically cover there. It'll be sort of an old news thing. I think that was the way Hillary got out of some of the controversies she was surrounded around. Just say, oh, that's old news. They reported on it last time.
Right.
And they just managed to wiggle out of having to deal with it from that. But we can get back to what the Republicans are going to do and Democrats are going to do and talk a little more in detail on that. But I want to go to former President Trump, who made his announcement. And Dan, if we have that announcement, let's go ahead and roll that real quick. And then I want to respond and talk about, because I think this is where a lot of that uncertainty comes forward with what Republicans are going to do going forward. It's a little different this time around, but let's take a look at former President Trump making his announcement.
But we always have known that this was not the end. It was only the beginning of our fight to rescue the American dream. In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
So, is that going to be MAGAGA? Make America Great and Glorious Again. I don't know if we're going to go to, I don't think that's not quite as catchy as MAGA. But I want to start there because I think this is, the biggest thing, probably the biggest storyline going forward, obviously, is Trump running. And I have a lot of questions here. But number one, David, why do you think he announced so early?
Well, there's this conventional wisdom that, very hard to potentially indict someone who's running for president. And I think that might be part of it. But I also think that, Trump's been hinting at this honestly, ever since he left the Oval Office, he's been hinting at this. And so, Trump is not only a muckraker, but he's unconventional. Oh, this just in, he's unconventional. And so, we've never seen a president announce this early. I mean, we just haven't. So, I just think he wants to get going. I think it's a way to define the narrative early. He saw that, a lot of people are saying don't do it because all this stuff is stacked against you. The deck is stacked against you. And I think that's exactly the reason why he did it, because he's the underdog. He loves the underdog role. If he looked like everything was going great for him, well, then there's nothing to rail against. There's nothing to be, angry about. I mean, he needs to feel like everybody's ganging up on him. And so I think this was actually kind of pretty good timing for him.
Yeah. I was listening to some analysis, it was yesterday or today, and they were saying that with Trump really the only candidate in the race now for 2024, he doesn't have anybody to beat up on. So he kind of needs other candidates to get in so that he has somebody to, punch at. I have noted, Twitter, different platforms, he has gone after Ron DeSantis. And you have to think, David, that he sees Ron DeSantis as somewhat of a threat to be going after him like this.
Yeah, I mean, he started with Ron DeSanctimonious, but honestly, that's child's play for Trump. I mean, he's just getting going. He hasn't started. I'm not convinced that DeSantis is going to get in, by the way. I do think he wants to get in. That's not what I'm saying. I think he wants to get in, but I think when he takes a closer look at it, there's a lot of problems ahead for DeSantis. Because remember, if DeSantis gets in the race, he's going to have to attack Trump. I mean, these are two alpha males. So he's not going to, I mean, it's not going to be where Trump bashes on DeSantis. DeSantis will give it back to Trump. The problem is if you attack Trump, you're attacking the MAGA king. You're attacking MAGA. You're attacking the very voters that you need in the primaries. And I think that's a game of three-dimensional chess. It's going to be very difficult for Ron DeSantis. And plus, why tarnish yourself? I mean, why be the next Lying Ted or Little Marco? I mean, to me, you know, and why even be involved with Trump at all? Like he's got a lot of baggage, you know, obviously Trump does. And so why even kind of get involved in that mess and just, you know, get out of the pigsty? And I would just stay out of it. But we'll see. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
David, you know, there has been talk this week after Republicans' poor showing in the midterm elections, disappointing showing. You know, there is talk that some of Trump's base is upset with him, is potentially leaving him. What do you make of those?
So Jenna, I'm glad you brought that up because this is really interesting. So. And do I have some here? I think it's in this bottle somewhere, like some truth serum. Like, can I give everybody some truth serum? Because if we gave truth serum to every conservative in America, you know what? I'm talking about truth serum. Here's what they would say. Yeah, kind of wish Trump would just kind of evaporate, and I would like DeSantis probably better. That's what they would. But a lot of them won't say it publicly. A lot of the MAGA folks won't say it publicly. They're going to be with Trump to the bitter end. But deep down, they probably wouldn't mind seeing DeSantis over Trump. Now, you know, having said that, I'm not quite sure. I will tell you this, that in terms of the people that are lining up against Trump, you've got the GOP mega donors. Already 2 of them have said they're not going to support Trump. I think the bigger problem for Trump is the Murdoch-backed News Corps. You know, because you've got Fox News that pretty much is going to start to be the pro-DeSantis network. And then you've got the New York Post and the Wall Street Journal, and they're all negative on Trump right now. I don't know if you saw, but the New York Post ran that headline. Did you guys see that post? New York Post ran a headline after Trump announced, and it said at the bottom of the headline, it said, Florida man makes announcement on page 26. This is the conservative New York Post, owned by Rupert Murdoch's group News Corps, who put Florida man makes announcement, page 26, and they did a blurb on page 26. Look, that's a problem for Trump. I mean, if that's they don't want Trump. The Murdoch folks don't want Trump, and that's a problem for him from a media strategy standpoint.
I noticed that. I was curious. This was yesterday. I was curious what some of the Fox News programs would lead with after Trump's announcement. They weren't leading with Trump's announcement.
Yeah. I noticed that too.
And you know, that's also interesting. When I was watching, and I had Chinese food, I was just watching Trump's announcement. Not that I had to announce that I had Chinese food. I don't know, that had nothing to do with anything. but literally on Fox News, I'm watching Fox News, and Hannity goes to it, and I'm watching for about 20 minutes, and all of a sudden they dump out. Like you said, I mean, they dumped out, and I had to go over to Newsmax to watch it, at least on my 1985 television. I know I'm back to television, but anyhow, so. It's just interesting. Very new dynamic. So a lot of different challenges, not to mention January 6th is a clear challenge.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to just take a quick time out here because for all of you, if you're watching this on YouTube, we're going to continue this conversation on the CBN News app. And I would just encourage you, for as great and fantastic as YouTube is, I would encourage you to download the CBN News app because essentially on all these digital media platforms, you are largely getting influenced by what an algorithm decides you should and shouldn't see. So take that control of your news, watch a news network, CBN News, that mirrors your values, your Christian values. So download the CBN News app. We're going to continue this conversation for a little bit longer here. We appreciate you tuning in and hope to see you over there on the CBN News app. All right, so continuing that line of thought, David, I have seen, I will just say, for me, sitting back on the internet, eating my popcorn, watching all this unfold and seeing DeSanctimonious, Ron DeSantis, and we'll show his response to that coming back here in just a second. But I'm seeing more and more people that I ever saw before willing to say, I don't know, like you were saying that, the truth serum, that maybe they want DeSantis, maybe he's a little more, safer, so to speak, because of all of the, Democrats have a narrative already built in with Trump. They've got January 6th. They've got, whatever else they want to say about him, but January 6th being probably the main thing that they'll dig at. They call him, just the misinformation chief, whatever. They've got this built-in narratives. It's a little different with DeSantis. They're going to have to come up with new stuff. They're going to have to, try to rally people against DeSantis. So you have this built-in narrative on the one side, but I see a lot of conservatives, prominent ones, questioning, especially when he called out DeSantis prior to the election. I think a lot of people thought that was not great form right ahead of an election that you're trying to win. So what do you make of some prominent conservatives sort of questioning it? Whereas I don't think you would have seen that very much before. I mean, I guess you had the Never Trumpers in the early going, and there was that fracture, but it feels a little different this time. What do you think?
I think it's significant. I don't think there's any question about it. It's significant. I think one thing, though, people aren't factoring in about Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis looks really good, yes, in Florida on some of what he's done, but also on paper as a candidate. But once he gets into the ring with Trump, how does he react? What does he do? It's a whole different ballgame when you're actually running for president rather than thinking about running for president. And I think I really believe that. I think some of these Republicans and others that are saying they're in the pro-DeSantis camp, that's great. But how does he perform under pressure? How does he perform with Trump? How does he kind of maneuver all of that? I think that we may get a different sense of Ron DeSantis. Maybe. I'm not saying we will, but maybe if and when he runs. Not to mention, listen, straight up, Trump's got a treasure trove, at least they think, treasure trove of stuff that he's going to talk about regarding DeSantis. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's some stuff going on there that sources tell me that they're going to start unloading on DeSantis. So he's not going to be this conservative altar boy that we hear about after Trump is done with him. And that's my whole point. Why, if you're DeSantis, why go through that? Wait till 2028. I mean, what are you, 40? What is he, 44,
He's young.
5, 6? Yeah.
He's young.
He's in his mid-early 40s, something like that.
Anyhow, that's my take.
No, it's interesting. But let's look at, I want to, just because you talked about how would he respond, what would he look like in the ring? Dan, if you have that clip, let's play how DeSantis responded. This was after the election, after that he won re-election, and kind of indirectly / directly responded to Trump's calling him Ron DeSanctimonious.
One of the things I've learned in this job is when you're leading, when you're getting things done, you take incoming fire. That's just the nature of it. I think what you learn is all that's just noise. And really what matters is, are you leading? Are you getting in front of issues? Are you delivering results for people? And are you standing up for folks? And if you do that, then none of that stuff matters. And that's what we've done. We focused on results and leadership. And, at the end of the day, I would just tell people to go check out the scoreboard from last Tuesday night.
Now, I find that approach interesting. Now, obviously, this isn't, like you said, this is all in hypothetical territory. He's not actually running, he's not actually having to respond to anything yet. So that's a whole different ballgame when that happens. But for now, at least, that seems like a good approach.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good approach, but here's the thing. What if he said that and he was running against Trump in a primary? You know what Trump would say? Trump would say, Ron, I 100% agree with you. Results matter. Let me tell you about my results as president of the United States, and then go on and on and on about being the most pro-life president, going X, Y. So Trump has a record to run on. So this idea that DeSantis is this, like I said, the conservative altar boy in Florida, he's got a great record to run on, but Trump does too. And so I think that kind of evens itself out. I honestly, and Jenna, I'm curious to get your take on this, but I just feel like there is a Trump fatigue factor. I mean, there just is. I mean, and once again, I'm not saying that that's my opinion, because I don't have opinion. I have analysis. I don't have an opinion. But I get a sense, back to the truth serum, that people are like, look, I get it. Thank you, President Trump, but I don't know. There's only so much medication I can take in one day. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like people. Go ahead, Jenna. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think it could be very challenging for him to win with groups like independents, women, suburban women, groups like that in 2024. He didn't do great with them in 2020, and I don't see that changing. I will say one thing that will help Trump in 2024 is if the Republican primary is a crowded field, because that that, you know, if you have DeSantis, you have Pence, you have Pompeo, you have all of these different people. They're splitting up all those votes. And meanwhile, Trump still has a very good portion of his base. So I think that's a big factor and will determine whether Trump prevails or if somebody else like DeSantis can be the nominee.
You know, that's a great point. And on the woman factor, what's interesting here, and to bring up the abortion, the overturning of Roe, that will not be on the ballot in 2024. It was in 2022. It was, as you guys know, 3 or 4 months, the midterms came 3 or 4 months after Roe. And, you know, there's a lot of conservatives that are telling me, like, what were they thinking in terms of the Mississippi case? Like, I understand the timing had to be the timing, but that would have been better in an off election year, not in a midterm year. Because that did make the difference in 2022. I truly believe that, you know, you got a lot of women and men, but women riled up on the abortion issue. Independents, as Jenna was talking about, many in the suburbs who were like, you know what? I'm not going to have the Republicans take away this from me. And, you know, it's like it's kind of like this, the psychology of you're not going to tell me what to do. And it worked. Yeah. I mean, it worked. And I don't mean it worked. I'm not trying to say positive or negative. It just did. It just worked. And so that won't be on the ballot in 2024. So that's good for Trump, DeSantis, whoever the Republican nominee is. And I just think that's something to keep in mind, because I truly believe the midterms, abortion, as we saw, was a big issue. That will not be as big of an issue, at least on an overturning Roe situation, that it was this time.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we'll be a lot farther removed from it, and it was fresh right now. I mean, it just happened. So in June. Right. So you only had a couple months removed from it. The fear on that from people who are on, you know, the pro-abortion side and, you know, fearing that they're losing what they perceive as a right. That's all fresh, but, you know, a couple of years down the line, I don't know if you can rally people from the Democratic side like they did. Because I live in Pennsylvania, and literally every single attack ad on Oz was all about abortion. Every single one of them. Yeah. So the whole campaign came down to that. So I want to talk about two things here, you know, on the candidate. Let's go to Biden for a second here. You know, you mentioned a couple of the other possibles, Jenna, who could be running on the Republican side. Maybe we'll get back to those in a minute, the Pences, and maybe look at that a little closer. But what's going to go on with Biden here? Because you're seeing murmurs of Democrats saying he shouldn't run again. You know, too old. Just it's not an exciting ticket. You know, maybe Biden gave himself a good argument here by having, you know, a decent midterm, all things considered, for Democrats. What do you see happening with Biden going forward?
I got to tell you, you mentioned murmur. Sure, we can use the word murmur, but I would put it in all caps. What's the word above murmur? Because you know, I don't know. To me, this is the pulse that I get from talking to folks, and he's not going to run. I mean, you know, I think Trump thinks Biden's going to run, but I don't think he is. And Democrats are clearly concerned. I mean, we've seen the cognitive decline. Let's talk about it, right? It's not even the elephant in the room anymore. It just is. It's happening. We see it. We have a grandparent or a relative that we've seen be like this, and that's sad. So I don't think he's going to do it. Now, here's the problem. Kamala Harris is cackling and going, hey, maybe I can do it. No, sorry. Democrats don't look at the polls. Democrats don't like Kamala. So that's not happening, or at least for a nominee standpoint. And so then who's there? Gavin Newsom? Well, he wants to run. He would like to walk into the Oval Office today, honestly. But, you know, he is also they tried to recall him in California, and he's from California, which is not obviously the most conservative state in the country, if you know what I'm saying. So Gavin Newsom has issues. And then that leaves me with, I'll just say it, and if she decides to run, she will win. It's Michelle Obama. It's just that simple.
I agree.
I think if Michelle Obama decides to run, the White House is hers. I don't think there's any question about it.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, on the Michelle Obama thing, and in large part because, I mean, you remember, and I've had some people, because I've floated that same idea to some friends just talking about this, and they brought, you know, I said, look, the media will fawn like you have never seen the media fawn before. I mean, they did it to her the first time around. They loved her. And that's fine. You know, she was first lady, whatever. I mean, that's their prerogative. But remember, they had to pull her off of speaking in 2008 because she had several comments that were considered far too radical at that time. But you know what's interesting? I don't think that the comments, like she said, for the first time in my adult life, I'm proud of my country. That was one of the things she said. Barack knows we need to change history. Those were a couple of things she said in the campaign trail. Then they kind of like pulled her off and said, okay, we need to just lay low here while Barack, gets this thing locked up. But I don't think those comments are controversial in today's culture anymore. I mean, people are just bashing America for sport. And so, which is an amazing sign of how far we've come in just 14 years. But I don't think those comments that maybe she might make here on a campaign trail that would have been considered negative are actually negative now. So I agree with you. I think she would have a very, very good chance of winning the White House if she ran.
I agree.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
How serious do you think she is about running?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I have no intel on that. All I can tell you is that if past is prologue, if we look at her of what she said in the past, she wants she wants nothing to do with Washington, and she's talked about some. Honestly, I mean, I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this, but she's talked about some of her struggles physically during this period in life. I'll leave it at that. She's in her mid to late 50s, and she's talked publicly. So I'll say this because she said publicly, but she's talked about a weight gain. She's talked about some things that are going through her body metaphysically in this period of a woman's life, and I think she's been very outspoken about that, and it's been a real struggle for her. So I'm not quite sure if the timing is going to be right for her. And once again, that's not me kind of projecting that, but it's her actually talking very candidly about that. So I don't know. We'll see.
Just out of curiosity, any indication Hillary Clinton is considering throwing her hat in the ring?
Oh God!
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if we had Trump and Hillary Clinton again? That would be something.
I've got to go to the pharmacy. I'll be back in a second.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Gosh. Oh my gosh. No, I think that ship has sailed. I really do. I think so. But I can't say
a name that
can I just say one real quick? I did talk to Dick Morris the other day, the Republican strategist, who says that it will be Hillary Clinton in 2024. And this is the former Dick Morris, who used to work for the Clintons, who's very in the know. He thinks it's going. Not he thinks. He's like positive that it's going to be Hillary Clinton. I don't know about that, but Jen, I'm glad you brought that up. That is interesting.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And another interesting thing I thought was on our election night coverage, CBN's Abigail Robertson, we were talking about this very question, and she said a name she hears a lot is Pete Buttigieg as someone who the Democrats really like to put in there. I mean, what do you make of his chances if he were to get put into that spot?
Potentially. He's really good from an oratory standpoint. He can kind of play the moderate card if he wants to. He's got his own baggage as it relates to South Bend and some other things, and he hasn't been this amazing transportation secretary or anything. If anything, there's been problems there. So I don't know. But I think Elizabeth Warren is someone to keep your eye on. I mean, I think she might get back and possibly run. We'll see. It's hard to say. It's so hard. I mean, the Democrats don't have a deep bench. That's the problem. Hard to say.
David, of the on the Republican side in the primary, who do you think poses the biggest challenge to Donald Trump?
Well, definitely DeSantis if he gets in, obviously. But after that, I mean, if DeSantis decides not to, well, then it's.
What about Mike Pence?
Well, Mike Pence is thinking about getting in. My sense is he will get in. Look, I got to tell you, after these interviews I've seen with him this past week, he's angry. He feels that Trump, let him out there to dry, if you will, and just didn't have his back. And Pence was so loyal to Donald Trump. And you can see not just a sadness, but I think there's a indignation and anger. And so I do think, not that he's going to do it from a retribution standpoint, but I think he feels like this country needs something better. And I think he's would want to do it for those reasons. So, yeah, I think he'll be in. I think Mike Pompeo is definitely going to run 100%. As a matter of fact, he took a swipe at Trump the other day saying we shouldn't look backwards, but we need to look forward. So all of his former folks in the administration
Right. We've seen a few. I mean, so far we've seen a few people, lawmakers come out in support of Donald Trump. I know Elise Stefanik, maybe a couple of others. But David, do you think this time around, would he have a lot of the support of some of his former administration officials, people who were former friends of his?
Yeah, you know what the answer is going to be is they're going to do this. They're going to go and put which way is the wind blowing, and that's what they're going to do, and that's the truthful answer, because the answer will be, if Trump is doing well and the people and the polls and everything are going well, and Trump has to put his foot in his mouth, well, he'll definitely put his foot in his mouth. But if he doesn't do it too much and he seems like a bit of a change guy, he's never going to be a change guy. But if he's relatively good, then they'll go with him. If not, they won't. And I think it's just that simple. I did think it was interesting that Donald Trump did not once mention the 2020 election, where we talked, he always likes to question the 2020 election all the time. He didn't do that during his his announcement. Now he talked about the elections, paper ballots. And I think the strategy for Trump on that is to look forward on that. In other words, talk about paper ballots, talk about the reforming of the election or the voting system and all of that. Talk about how Republicans can be better in early and mail-in voting. But if you're going to start looking back at 2020 and say, hey, they cost me the election, that's not good. You already had the people that believe that, he already has. Yeah. So you got to broaden your base. You got to go to independents and other people that are like, okay, finally, he got the message. He's not looking back. He's looking forward. And I think that would help him.
Yeah, that was one of Mike Pence's, in that interview I did with ABC News, Mike Pence's criticisms. It was also one of Mike Pompeo's criticisms of saying Donald Trump looks backwards, acting like a victim, yada, yada, yada. That was a common complaint.
Yeah. I was just going to throw out another name, guys, that I hear through my sources, through my deep well of sources that I have.
Wait, I'm listening.
No, but I do have just a couple of people talking to that are kind of close to the situation. And I mean, Kristi Noem seems to be considering this as well. Have you heard anything on that front?
Yes, in the sense that when I spoke to Kristi Noem, and not to do a backstory, but I know her personally. I've been out to her home, know her family. She told me that if Donald Trump runs for president, she will not run for president. Now, that was 6 months ago. That was, maybe 9 months ago, actually. So a lot has changed since then, to a degree. Maybe she's rethinking that. But she says she won't run. Nikki Haley has said she will not run if Trump runs. But now, I don't know. I mean, with Ron DeSantis now possibly in there and Trump being a little bit more, having more battle scars, that may change. But I don't see Kristi Noem running, no.
All right. Well, we are running here towards the end of this little special here, kind of mapping out what's going to happen here in the next couple of years. Any other areas, David, you think we should hit before we head out? Anything of note? One thing I did want to ask real quick was the Walker-Warnock race. That's kind of one of the ones that's still up. I know Democrats got control of the Senate, but A, what does it look like is going to happen in this runoff? And B, does it matter?
I think it's going to help Democrats more that the Senate's already decided, because Republican enthusiasm won't be the same. So I think this probably will give the victory to Warnock. That would be my, best astute prediction. Did I say astute in my predictions? That doesn't usually go that way. But that, if that takes them to 51, the answer is, why does it matter? Well, look, if they get to 51, then I have two names for you, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. Remember, those were the two that were always the problem for Democrats, that they could never get change the filibuster rules because of those two. Well, now if you're at 51, you only need to convince one of them, not two of them. At least it helps a little bit more. You don't need two. You just need one, because the minute they get, if they lose Manchin, let's say, but they get Sinema, then they have the numbers to change the filibuster on a lot of different things. So that would be the significance.
All right. So any other thing we need to hit here before we head out? Because look, we've covered a lot of ground, but it is going to be a wild couple of years here. Like you said, probably a lot of gridlock, a lot of butting of heads and stalling, but there's going to be a lot of positioning as well.
I will say one thing I would add is that I do think a lot of it's going 2024. I think a lot hinges on what the economy looks like in 2024, how people are feeling. I mean, that's just, I feel like that is really the biggest factor.
Okay, so you're kind of like channeling me, I think, Jenna, a little, because I was thinking of the same thing. I mean, it's such a great point, because here's the thing. What Trump said in his announcement, I thought the biggest line in Trump's announcement was when he said this. He said that I believe America will not be as good in 2024. He says it will be a lot worse in 2024, in 2 years. He thinks that we haven't even begun to see how bad this is going to get. So what I've learned with Trump is that he has a pretty good spidey sense on stuff. He's like got the ultimate spidey sense. He's banking on the fact that two things: America won't be the way it is today. And if you think now is bad, he's saying 2 years from now it's going to be even worse, to Jenna's point. And then Biden, if he's on the ballot, which Trump thinks he's going to be, well, Biden on the ballot 2 years later, plus an even worse economy and other factors, Trump thinks he can win an election like that. I think that's what I took away from that.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I mean, it's always been the economy's stupid, and like we said, maybe the the Roe situation maybe altered and played into that a little bit this time because it was so fresh. But if you go 2 years down the road and people are still paying $4 a gallon in gas, and they're still paying, I mean, I go to the grocery store and buy 3 things, and they're like, okay, $37, and I'm like, what? I got some salsa and some chips. So
I got to take out a mortgage. I got to take out a mortgage for Thanksgiving dinner.
Right.
Mortgage rates are about 7% now. So there's that as well.
Yes. So, but if that continues now for a couple more years and it doesn't improve, there's no way around. I thought there was no way around that for the Democrats who are in control now. There definitely won't be a way around that in 2 years from now. Now, to Jenna's point, if it improves, if things look like it's getting better, well, now Democrats get a little bit of a stronger foothold, and they can make that case that they're improving things. So I think you guys are spot on. The economy, is the economy stupid? That's right. What the old saying goes.
Did you just call me stupid? You called us stupid.
No.
Oh.
No. Yeah, probably shouldn't have gone that route. But anyway, all right. Well, we'll leave it there then. I mean, look, you can watch the CBN News Channel, Faith Nation. Just check us out. We're gonna be on this stuff week in and week out over the next couple years here as we get into Biden's second half of the first term. But we appreciate you who have all downloaded the CBN News app. You're here with us. We're very grateful for that, and we're thankful you joined us tonight. And we hope to see you soon. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Jenna.
Thanks, David. Bye, guys.
Yep.